Good evening.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Hello. Oh, yep, we're live. Probably just wait a few minutes or a few seconds to let some other people join. Something we can talk about while we wait.
We're officially open, fully open. All guests are welcome. No social distancing and no masks for customers. So if you guys want to come on down, we are open this weekend. Pizza Truck is here on Saturday and Q's Taco is here Sunday. I believe we may have some openings still in the cellar room if you want to call and try to book an appointment. We have seating in the main tasting room, back to open bar space. The outdoor patio will remain open. Members Pavilion is open Saturday and Sunday as well. And then this bar room is back to being open.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of warm this weekend, so come out and check out the new Members Pavilion. Pretty cool new tasting room we have open if you haven't been by and seen that yet. So,
Cool.
Shall we get started? Get rolling. Let's get drinking.
So today we're tasting the June Wine Club release. Mixed members got a bottle of Amour, the 2019 Viognier, and the 2018 or 19? 18 Bare Knuckle Petite Sirah. So we're going to start with, if you guys are tasting with us, we're going to start with the Viognier. So this is the 2019 Viognier. This is 94% Viognier. 70% comes from our Sage Vineyard, and 24% comes from our La Cresta Vineyard, which is the Yaze property.
Yeah, and you'll see on the bottle, you can't see in the video, but it says Riverside County, and that's because our Sage Vineyard lies just outside of the Temecula Valley AVA. AVA stands for, I think, American Viticultural Area, and that's kind of the boundary that they put on anything from Temecula Valley. And because this vineyard lies right outside of that boundary, we can't call it Temecula Valley, but it is pretty close. It's actually closer to the estate than a lot of our vineyards are up in La Cresta. It's more east of the valley. So really nice fruit from that vineyard, though. We purchased that vineyard a long time ago. That's my Uncle Jeff's vineyard, and we get really good fruit from that vineyard. So
yeah. The Viognier is one of the first lots to actually flower out there. So on a tough year, sometimes it will get hit with frost and we can actually lose part of it. So that's why we bump the crop with the La Cresta Viognier. But they both have really high altitudes compared to the estate here. One's a lot closer to the coast. The Sage one is higher in elevation, but further inland. So you get some cooler nights sometimes. And like I said, you can also get some frost damage. So we run some heaters out there and just keep an eye on it. And then to brighten this wine up, we do about 6% Pinot Grigio as well. It's our favorite blender.
Yeah, we actually did lose a little bit of the crop this year. We had a frost in late May that came through, and unfortunately we lost a little bit of the Viognier to that. But that's kind of the nature of the business. You know, it's you're at the mercy of Mother Nature and what she throws at you, and you take what you can get. So what we do get from the vineyard is really nice, and obviously our fruit in La Cresta is really nice as well. So we tend to harvest a little brighter or a little younger, I should say, than most people. So we're looking for kind of a lower alcohol white wine, and with that higher acidity. So as the grapes ripen on the vine, they start to accumulate more sugar, and the acid starts to go away. Precipitate, yeah. So metabolize or something like that. So by harvesting earlier, it has a little less sugar, so that sugar converts into a little less alcohol, but it does retain really nice, bright acidity. And with the warmth that we see down here in Temecula, we found that harvesting a little on the less ripe side kind of retains those nice, fresh floral aromas. Viognier can tend to get a little
overly ripe, and
yeah,
it creates a more viscous wine. That's why some people actually strayed away from Viognier for like decades, just because when you let them get overly ripe, get really nice stone fruit notes and like bright apricot, but at the same time you lose that acidity and it just kind of has a very heavy palate weight. And sometimes the only way to really counteract that is to serve this with food. But you know, the thing with being in this hot area, it's nice to have a glass of wine that you can just enjoy by itself, and that's why we transitioned to picking it a little bit earlier and holding on to more of the floral notes without becoming too overly potpourri and viscous. So.
Yeah. There's a term for Viognier, tasting term called oily, which sounds kind of gross, and it is kind of gross. When you let it get overripe, it gets this really viscous, thick, almost oily sensation on the palate. And because we personally aren't a big fan of that flavor profile, we tend to harvest a little younger so that we keep it nice and light and crisp. The comments are open. So if you're tasting along with us and you have any questions or comments about these wines, please feel free to shoot them out there. Viognier tends to keep really nice floral notes. What else would you say about this wine on the nose and palate?
I get a lot of the lemongrass. So.
Yeah, kind of citrusy and grassy at the same time. So
I kind of get this pineapple too.
Yeah. And it does have a little bit of that white floral note. That's I really enjoy. If it gets too perfumey, it can be a little much, but a little hint of that kind of spring aroma is nice in a wine.
Yeah, when we say like could become too potpourri, it's like when you go to Grandma's house and she has the basket of the seashell soaps.
Yeah,
and that's all you smell in the house. That's what can happen if you let those flavors develop. So we manage that by managing our fermentation temperatures as well, fermenting at cooler temperatures to hold on and to different aroma and thiols, which can affect how wine drinks and smells. So, but yeah, this thing's super lean, bright crisp acidity. I think we kept the pH on this one. It was 3.27, so it's going to be really bright and crisp. But a very refreshing glass of wine. And then actually with the 19 vintage, this is the last time you're going to see a Viognier till possibly maybe early 2022. We made all the Viognier into a white blend. So.
Yeah. Last year we barely got any Viognier. So what little we did get went into, I believe, the Réunion Blanc. Yeah, into the Réunion Blanc, and we weren't able to do a standalone Viognier. We'll see this year. It's still a little early to tell. The fruit has set, so we can kind of do cluster counts and get an idea of how much is going to be out there, but it's best to wait a little bit longer to really kind of get a good idea of what crop load we're looking at this year. But we could very well have a low crop of Viognier again, and typically if it's under about 500 gallons, that's our smallest tank. And if it's under that amount, we'll typically make a blend so that we can fill up the tank. You don't want a tank with a bunch of headspace, because that oxygen can kind of oxidize the wine or prematurely age the wine. So
yeah, and if you get premature oxidation, it's kind of hard to counteract those flavors as they develop. So they'll become in part of the wine, and you can kind of mask them, but over time, as a wine will naturally oxidize or age and oxygen intake increases, it's going to enhance those flavors that were already there. So we try to keep them topped up, sulfited, and just watch over them, taste them all the time. But it's one of those things, the more you taste, the more headspace you develop, because you empty the tanks.
Yeah.
So it's one of those balancing acts. I think this is a great wine. Really sad to see it go. I think we only made about 190 cases of it, which some people may think is a lot, but when you ship about 90 of those cases to the wine club, there's not much. I think the last pallet of it's here, and like I said, we're not going to see Viognier for a little while.
Especially when you're on travel to New England. Oh, I think it's hot out there too. I'm not sure. Maybe you were hot out there last week, but I wish I was somewhere cool right now.
No.
I don't know if New England is cool.
So I think this is a very easy drinking white wine. Like I was saying, I finished my glass, and we didn't have another wine to taste, I'd probably pour myself a second.
Yeah.
But it's really, really enjoyable.
Goes down the hatch,
Yeah.
as they say.
So,
Do you want to
yeah.
move on to this guy? So we'll try the red portion of the shipment. So this is a 2018 Bare Knuckle Petite Sirah. I think we started this label in maybe 2012. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been running this wine for a while, and basically what we had a decent amount of Petite Sirah, and because we're known for big reds, and because that's kind of the style that we make our red wine, this wine was kind of over the top, big, full tannins, really full-bodied and rich, and we felt like it wouldn't, the white label wouldn't suit it. So white label wines are typically, you know, like the Viognier has got a white label, but you'll see some of our red wines, Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Barbera, Sangiovese will have the white label. And this wine was so big and bold that we wanted to do a special label for it. So I was talking to my dad and kind of thinking of ideas, and he had mentioned that his great-grandfather, which is my great-great-grandfather, was a bare knuckle boxer. And so we're like, oh, that's kind of a cool name, and it fits the wine because the wine is so kind of brash and bold and heavy hitting that we thought that would be kind of a fun label to do. So kind of one of my side hobbies is painting, and so I painted this label. We obviously, I'm sure some of you have heard this story before, but we don't have any photos of my great-great-grandfather, so I just kind of, you know, made him look like a Wiens. I don't really know what he looked like, but he's kind of Wiensy.
Yeah. For some reason, people think I'm related, but I did not. I was not the model for this. So.
Yeah, so it's kind of a fun label, and it was a really popular wine for us, and we kind of expanded the line. We have
It actually started as a futures, right?
Yeah, it was a futures lot for the first maybe 3 or 4 years, and was really really popular. So we expanded the line. We're doing a bare knuckle Cabernet Sauvignon and a bare knuckle Malbec as well. I didn't have time to do those paintings, but we found an amazing artist out of Escondido, Elena. I can't remember her last name, but she did a really good job on those paintings and kind of kept the spirit of the original painting alive in those two. So basically, the style with the Bare Knuckle series is just a little more full-bodied, bigger, heavy-hitting, but still somewhat approachable for anybody. So when you think of our, for example, our Reserve Petite Sirah, that one is, you know, big and bold and has a lot of tannin, but it's kind of one step above this in that it's, you know, it's more age-worthy and even more full-bodied. With this one, we wanted to keep it approachable to a wider audience, and one of the things that we do when we want to keep it approachable is we'll do some blending. And we found that Zinfandel is a really nice blender with Petite Sirah to kind of take some of that full-bodied edge off and maybe add a little more fruit and a little spice. Zinfandel, as a lot of you know, is really fruity and spicy, so that kind of helps the blend out and make it a little more approachable to a wider audience. This vintage in particular has 20% Primitivo, which is essentially the Italian version of Zinfandel, and this comes from our vineyard that we planted in '96, our original vineyard, the Montfort vineyard. So really nice wine. I should actually try it, and maybe it isn't really nice.
No, I think the aromatics are super great on this. I think the Primitivo brings out a lot of the spice. Kind of reminds me of like an oatmeal raisin cookie a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably coming from that Primitivo, that kind of raisiny character, which is nice.
The baking spices.
Baking spices, yeah. Some cinnamon, some nutmeg going on.
Yeah, we aged this for 15 months in American and French oak. So it's just kind of, we like to use French and European oak for our Primitivo. like Joe was saying, the Primitivo can be very similar to Zinfandel. So the thing that we do in the back of the house in production is we age Primitivo and French oak and the Zinfandel and American oak to kind of make sure that they're different from one another because they're so similar.
Yeah. Yeah, and the barrels can do a lot to help kind of guide where the finished wine ends up. French oak tends to be a tighter grain, so you don't get as much oaky flavors, but you do still get some really nice oak tannin and integration, whereas American oak is a little more full tannin, and definitely the oak flavors, think of like coffee, mocha, chocolate, definitely stand out more in American oak. Coconut as well. Happy Father's Day. Yeah, we're both, he's been a father for a long time, but I've got a 16-month-old at home now, so this will be my second Father's Day. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep.
I'll probably be out in the vineyard most of the day Sunday, but we'll have a nice dinner Sunday night, so should be fun. Who did the artwork on the Obscura?
Another cool artist.
Yeah, Alex something. I'm terrible with names. So
I think the first label we did for the Obscura was like a 2009 vintage.
Yeah.
And once we, that artwork never changed. So once we find them, we kind of forget. And that was the only one he did for us. So it's not like we contact him every year like we do Kelly, that does a lot of our labels.
Yeah, she'll do a new art piece every year for the Crowded. But
Yeah.
this guy did a really good job. I actually found him. I kind of had the idea of what I wanted for the label and looked online and found a local artist that was working in that style, kind of what they call pixel art or pixelized art, which was kind of avant-garde in 2010, 2011. Now you see it everywhere, but still a really cool label, and definitely suits the name. So this has actually mellowed out a lot since we bottled it. I remember being pretty worried when we batched it in the tank that it was really austere, and
I think the tannins were just way too aggressive.
Yeah, and it's amazing what a year or so in the bottle will do to help kind of smooth out the tannins and make it a little more easy drinking.
And that's kind of why you see a lower aging time in oak on this wine, because there's enough tannin structure within the Petite Sirah that we don't want it to become overly tannic, because then you're going to cover up that fruit profile and it just becomes one-dimensional. And then you can aerate it or decant it for a little while, but we like the main tasting room wines to be approachable, and like Joe was saying, that it's an offering for everybody. And sometimes if you make a wine too big, you turn too many people away. So it's about finding a balance between the fruit itself and how it ages in the wine. So this one was 15 months, and I think it was the right call on getting it out of the barrel and bottling it. And this was probably in the bottle well over a year before we released it.
Yeah. Kind of one silver lining with the whole COVID situation was that we were able to kind of hold wines longer than we were holding them. So a little more bottle conditioning, a little more smoothing out of the tannins, and making the wines more ready to drink when they're released, which we're pretty happy about. And kind of back on that same point, this, typically the Bare Knuckle series, we want to be enjoyable, not necessarily with food. So you don't necessarily need a meal to enjoy a glass of wine of this. Whereas you don't need a meal to enjoy our reserves, but they definitely, I feel, show better if you're opening our reserve Petite Sirah to have a nice, grilled ribeye or something to accompany that, to kind of balance those flavors out. So
Randy's asking if, as the restrictions get lifted, which I think for the most part they all are, we're no longer doing any tier systems or anything, we're going to see events come back to the winery. As of right now, we don't have anything planned. Joe and I have talked about trying to do some, figure out something to do with the old vintages of wine that we had saved for dinners. But for the time being, I don't think we're going to have any dinners on the calendar anytime soon. So
I know the office staff is working hard to try to figure out something, and we should have an answer for especially pickup parties and starting something up with those again. But it's kind of been challenging figuring out all the workarounds and everything with all the restrictions. But as Randy said, they're getting lifted, so we're working hard to start those back up again. So.
You want to talk about the fruit profile or the wine profile as well?
Well, you pretty much nailed it with the brown
Velvet.
spice and a lot of dark fruit, definitely blackberry.
I think originally we had like an oak bourbon too in the notes.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that bourbon, and that typically comes from American oak, gives it that kind of bourbon or whiskey aromatic quality.
Yeah, I think it's really nice, really approachable. Still has enough structure and drying from the tannins that you probably could lay it down another 3 years, no problem, and then it'd still be great.
If you're able to. I have trouble with that in my household. They typically last a couple weeks before we find them. So anyway, if I don't know if anybody has any more questions. If not, we will probably sign off, and we'll see you again for the next release.
When's the next Winemaker Select? So that's actually in a couple weeks. The next one will be in July, and then we've moved these to the next Friday after the release. So when you guys get your shipments on Wednesday instead of that Friday 2 days later, we're waiting a whole another week so you guys have time to come and pick up your wine if you're local. So if you want to do these tastings with us, we're going to keep doing these for a little while. I think they're fun. They're great for the archive, for the Facebook and everything. So if you guys want to come in, pick up bottles. The next one, we tasted and priced it. We already released Cab Franc, right? Or was it Cab Franc?
Petite Sirah.
Petite Sirah. So yeah, back-to-back
there
Petite
you go.
shipments. So if you want to see the difference in the program, that's a perfect opportunity to try the Bare Knuckle and then try the Reserve Petite Sirah and see, what makes them so unique and different. I believe that Petite's probably 100% too.
Yeah,
So,
100% petite. Maybe, no, it's a blend. It's got a lot of sage in it, but it's a blend from a couple of our petite vineyards. So, all right, well, we'll sign off. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Cool. You guys have a
Cheers.
great weekend.